Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, especially if you're a college football fan. That's all we do here. Look, it's a long off season, and I'm here to get you through it. When you get a chance, go check out our Patreon page. A lot of time and effort going into that. In fact, we are having a live show just for Patreons tonight. Starts at 7 p.m. Also, check out our website, designed and created by Joey Foster. 8 great writers, led by our head writer, Michael Walker. And of course, I can't forget to mention our merchandise store. A lot of great stuff over there. I ordered my 2 t-shirts, the gold one and the blue one, and I love them. On to today's video. I'm hearing a lot of rumbles about USC leaving the Pac-12, possibly joining the Big Ten. What I'm hearing is that USC and the Big Ten have actually been talking. So whether it actually comes to fruition, I'm not sure. But what I'm hearing is they're actually talking. What would this do to college football? Well, first of all, I thought if USC were to leave the Pac-12, it would be to the SEC. Has the Big Ten beat them to the punch? Well, if they did, that could be the end of the Pac-12 as we know it, because USC is the biggest brand. I know Oregon fans, I hear you arguing about that, but the bottom line is USC is the biggest brand in the Pac-12. They are the biggest money maker. They do have the biggest TV market. So you can argue with me about that all you want, but USC is the biggest brand in the Pac-12. And the biggest thing about the Pac-12 that everybody says is academics is what holds this together. Yeah, but things are changing. It's all going towards football. USC is going to stay in the conference that offers them the most money through athletics, through TV contracts. And right now, the Pac-12 is not cutting the mustard. Now, the Pac-12's TV contract expires in the next few years, so maybe they can get a better TV contract. But if that doesn't happen, the Pac-12 can say bye-bye to USC. So what happens to the Pac-12? What are their options? Well, first of all, they got to convince all the other teams to stay. If USC does leave, then other teams will start thinking of leaving too. So they will have to convince all these other teams to stay. So this new TV contract is super important. Number 1, to keep USC. Number 2, if USC does go, to convince everybody else, hey, everything's fine, stay in the Pac-12, we'll be fine. The other thing that the Pac-12 would need to do is straight up absorb the Mountain West. To me, that is a great move for the Pac-12. You absorb the Mountain West, you pretty much own the West Coast. You'd be adding teams like Boise State, Nevada, San Diego State, San Jose State. And as bad as UNLV has been, they do have potential. They have a big market. They put a lot of money into their athletics. Joining a Power 5 might solve the UNLV problem as well. And as Mike Gundy put it when he was talking about the Big 12 expanding, there are strengths in number. So even if you were to lose USC, you could pull a Big 12 move and just straight up absorb the Mountain West. I'm sure the TV contract would be worth a lot more money if you do that. Now let's say the Pac-12 does relax on their rules, they get a great TV deal, they keep USC from leaving, and they decide to absorb the Mountain West. They would have to shed some dead weight from the Mountain West. In other words, they wouldn't absorb the entire Mountain West, only the best. I would say 8 teams to make it the Pac-20. So here's the teams that I do think would make the cut. Utah State. They've had a lot of success recently. They are building their brand. Air Force. They have a big fan base, and I think Air Force does have a decent brand, plus they're a military branch. Boise State. Of course, Boise State. They probably have the best brand in the Mountain West right now. Colorado State. Colorado State's up and coming, and it would give Colorado an in-state rival within the conference. San Diego State, they've invested a lot of money into their product and into their brand, so I think they've increased their value and they would make the cut. Fresno State, they're a little iffy, but I think their brand is strong enough to where they would be accepted. I'd also say Nevada would make the cut. They've been building their brand as well. And finally, San Jose State. They'd probably be the team that would be right on the line and barely make it. The other 4 teams, Wyoming, I mean, their fan base isn't that big. They'd have to build their brand a lot. New Mexico, same situation. UNLV, so many resources, but they're crap right now. UNLV could make the cut if they could just have more success on the field. And then finally, Hawaii, that's just too long of a trip, too much money spent on that every stinking year for all the teams. And it also means that the Mountain West members would be currently building their resume because they know the Pac-12 would be watching them. This would literally change the conversation from, oh, the Pac-12 could lose some of their major brands like Oregon, USC, UCLA, into the Pac-20. Oh, this is the biggest conference and they dominate the West Coast. Do you see how drastic the conversation would change if the Pac-12 would just make a few good decisions? Now, the biggest counter argument to that is academics having a Tier 1 research facility, which would be a deal breaker for most of the current Mountain West members. However, if the Pac-12 gets desperate, they'll probably be way more lenient and might actually do away with those rules altogether. That's how much this would change. Now, for USC, this would be a money decision. They know they can make more money elsewhere. Big Ten and the SEC would be the biggest options for them. In my opinion, I think USC would actually fit better in the SEC. I mean, either way you look at it, the SEC or the Big Ten would be stretching themselves if they were to grab USC. I think they would have to grab somebody else with USC. I'm thinking maybe either UCLA or an Oregon. And if that happens, the Pac-12 is in some deep trouble. So the future of the Pac-12 does hinge on if USC actually stays or goes. Now, I'm not saying that USC is actually thinking about leaving. All I know is they have been talking to the Big Ten. It wouldn't surprise me if they've also been talking to the SEC as well. They know they're a big brand. They know they would have choices if they did leave the Pac-12. I mean, that's common sense. That's a no-brainer. We can dance around the issue all we want, but the fact is, USC is the biggest brand in the Pac-12, and they most definitely would have options, and the Big Ten and the SEC wouldn't mind stretching all the way west to grab them. They'd probably want to grab a team with them, but if they couldn't, I mean, they could pick off a Florida State or a Clemson from the ACC and just add them with USC. Or they could just add USC by themselves. Same thing goes with the Big Ten. So yes, that would be a cross-country stretch for both the Big Ten and the SEC, but it's all about the money, and they know that there is money in USC. Now, I do think the Pac-12 got a very good new commissioner in Klyavkov. The old Pac-12 commissioner was, he didn't make good decisions at all. But from what I'm hearing, everybody likes this new commissioner. They're saying he's making good decisions. Maybe he actually can keep USC in the Pac-12. I think the biggest problem is the Pac-12 hasn't made any moves recently. I mean, they could have reached out to BYU, but the whole religion thing squashed that. They also said they weren't up to academic expectations. Look, guys, sometimes you got to do away with the old ways and take a new path. BYU would have been a great addition to the Pac-12. In fact, here's what I think the Pac-12 should have done. They should have grabbed BYU, Boise State, maybe Colorado State, and maybe like a San Diego State. But I also understand that the current California schools that are members of the Pac-12 don't want any more California schools. So that means no San Diego State and no San Jose State. So that would be a big hurdle for the Pac-12 to overcome if they wanted to add, say, a San Diego State, a San Jose State, or even a Fresno State. It's those other California schools that say, we don't want that. So if that was off the table, they could still grab a Boise State, a BYU, maybe a Colorado State, and maybe even convince Texas Tech to come over to the Pac-12. I think that would have been a good move. That's done and over with. That ship has sailed. That can't happen now. The Big 12 has picked up BYU, and Texas Tech isn't going anywhere. So the Pac-12 is a victim of their own choices. Who is there left for them to pick up now? Boise State? I mean, that's a decent brand, but compared to BYU, that's a drop in the bucket. Missed the train on that one, Pac-12. Way to go. So instead of trying to add members, now you might be looking at losing members real soon. That's the consequences of being, you're not good enough to be in the Pac-12. Are you kidding me? It's your arrogance that's going to be your downfall, Pac-12. I do understand the academic expectations. You only want the elite of academics in there. But times have changed. Those old rules have got to go away. You need new rules, because those old rules are eventually going to cause you to dissolve. It's time to move on from that. So honestly, I think this would be a make or break situation with the Pac-12. They most definitely have to keep USC. And on top of that, they need to add a couple more members, because yes, Mike Gundy is right. There is strength in numbers. You lose USC, it's game over, Pac-12. Game over. So number one, you need to negotiate a heck of a new TV deal. Number two, you better convince USC to stay no matter what, or it is over. And number three, you might want to start thinking about adding new members and get over your arrogance, because your arrogance will be your downfall if you don't get rid of it. And don't think that the Big 12 isn't eyeing some Pac-12 members either, because they are. If they see that the Pac-12 is ripe for pickings, if USC goes over to the Big 10 or the SEC, you better believe that they're going to come a-calling for Colorado, the Arizona schools, probably Utah. Could you imagine that? Colorado going back to the Big 12, Utah going over to the Big 12, Arizona and Arizona State going over to the Big 12. It makes too much sense. So a lot is on the line for you, Pac-12. I mean, you haven't made a playoff game in 6 years. 6 freaking years. And you still have the arrogance to say, you're not good enough to join the Pac-12. Are you kidding me? You keep up with that attitude and you're going to be irrelevant real soon. So I definitely have my eyes on the Pac-12 to see what kind of decision they make in the near future. TV contract, keeping USC, and grabbing some more teams. Y'all let me know in the comment section what you think about this situation in the Pac-12. Do you actually think that they're fine, that none of this is going to happen, and the Pac-12 has a great future? Or are you like me and you see the writing on the wall? If they don't make some good decisions, they will dissolve within the next 5 to 10 years. Something to think about. I look forward to your comments. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.